Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Deb Flashenberg, and I'm your host of Yoga Birth Babies, and today we have a community birth story. I absolutely love having the students come on and share their births. It's so inspiring because everyone has their own personal story, and then we get to hear of all these different journeys. And instead of having an idea that birth has to happen in one way, we get to see all the different unravelings in all these different scenarios. And I just find it builds confidence, and it's really fun to listen to. So today we have Aly Grobeck. Let me tell you a little bit about Aly. So she was born and raised in New York City on the Upper West Side. She did a brief stint for college in LA, and then she hopped back over to New York City, and she's still here. She loves to run, she loves to swim, and she met her husband at business school. She's now preparing to go back to her digital marketing job in the beauty industry, and she's just finishing off her 6-month maternity leave. Aly's story is so great. She has humor throughout it. She's just there and present and blunt. And one of the things I absolutely adore that Aly shares is the importance of listening to your body and not letting someone else tell you what your body is feeling, and standing up for saying, no, this is what I'm feeling and this is what we need to do. And I love that because it's something we talk about in yoga, about learning how to listen to your body for these cues so that when you're in something like your birth, you have that conversation, that body awareness already. And Aly really had that throughout her birth. So I think you're going to get a lot of laughs out of our conversation, but also just a lot of admiration for how she was able to take charge in her own birth. And some of her coping skills were excellent too. So now before we get to Aly's birth story, I always love to give some studio updates. What's happening at Prenatal Yoga Center? So we're still having our classes online 7 days a week. I'm incredibly proud of that. And in studio 6 days a week. So most days we have at least 2 prenatal in-person classes, and we have our hybrid classes, and then we've got our baby and me, our postnatal workshops. I'm so excited about this new parent support group we just started. It is amazing. It's with a midwife from the UK. Her name is Alice. It's really good stuff that we have going on. I'm so proud of it. And then also, we know that not everyone that's listening can get to our studio, and yet you still want to be part of the community. So as I mentioned, we have our yoga classes online, but we also have all of our workshops online. They're on demand. We built out a really robust on-demand library, so you can take a look at that. Then last thing I want to talk about some of the ongoings at PYC is we are in the middle of our last online training of kind of this cycle. I always think, because I have school-age kids, September through June as my teaching time. So we're on our last online cycle right now, the January, February. And then we have our in-person prenatal yoga teacher training in March and April. And then we have an online postnatal teacher training. I do that once a year in May. And we're going to slip it in right before my son's bar mitzvah. It's very exciting. So all that good stuff happening. And then before we get to my conversation with Aly, I always like just to say thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of the community. If you ever have a moment, I would so greatly appreciate you leaving a rating and review so people can find us. And also, as a listener, I'm sure you have been diving into your own understanding of pregnancy, birth, yoga, parenthood. And if you are someone that you think would be a great guest here, fill out our application. Or if you have a topic that I haven't covered, or maybe you want a different perspective, let me know. It's really important to me that what we put out in our podcast is serving you, the community. So you can fill out an application from our website, or if you have an idea for a podcast, you can let me know at deb@prenatalyogacenter.com. All right, we're going to take a super quick break. When we come back, please enjoy Aly's birth story. Hi, Aly. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Deb?
I'm doing really well. I'm so excited that you agreed to tell me your birth story because when you started to tell me a little bit about it in postnatal, I was kind of floored. And I thought we need to get this in a podcast. So I'm so excited to hear the details. Thank you for being open to sharing it. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited to share it.
All right. So let's start with, will you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, my name is Aly, and I am born and raised in New York City, actually on the Upper West Side. I moved to LA for a little bit for college, but then I ended up back here, and this is where I met my husband in business school, and we've been here ever since.
Amazing. And then I met you through the studio when you were pregnant. So tell me a little bit about how you got your mind around pregnancy and preparing for birth.
Yeah, so for pregnancy, I really had no idea what to expect, but I always knew that I was afraid of the birth part.
Mm.
So I started reading a ton of books on the birth part specifically. I know a lot of people try to read books on like the parenting part, and I was more focused on the birth part. And I knew that I needed to continue to move my body as much as possible. And I am a big swimmer and a big runner, but kind of towards the middle of my second trimester, I couldn't run anymore. So I decided to try out new activities, which is what brought me to the prenatal yoga center. And so I really prepared for my birth by reading up a lot on birth and keeping my body active. And I also did a lot of exercises that my doula told me to do. And then, of course, prenatal yoga.
So I want to jump in here a little bit. Did you keep swimming?
I did keep swimming. I actually swam, I think the day before I gave birth. So I swam right up until the end. And honestly, after every swim I did, I could feel the baby kicking so much. So I was like, I hope this baby's going to be a swimmer just like me.
I love that. With both my pregnancies, I swam, and it was one of the things that felt amazing in my body. I start to look very ridiculous in my bathing suits, but
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I used to swim in Speedos and there was no way the Speedo was
yes.
going to fit me, so I was just wearing this really tight one-piece bathing suit that was basically down below my boobs, but I don't care. At that point, I did not care.
Yeah, I love the swimming combined with the yoga, but I'm also curious. Tell me a little bit about some of the things that your doula told you to do physically.
So my doula told me a lot of stuff to do, but it was more so towards the end of the pregnancy. So I would say not until the third trimester did I really start doing exercises. But one of the ones that I definitely remember was the glute scoot, which we do in some of the prenatal yoga
Yeah.
classes. And that's basically where you just sit on your butt and move forward and backwards. But my favorite was getting on all fours and having my husband take a scarf and basically just
Yeah.
like swivel my belly like back and forth, and it just took all the weight off of me, and he had to do that for like a few minutes, and it just felt amazing, and that was my favorite.
Yeah, that feels really good for the lower back. Oh, your doula sounds like she really, really helped support you. We're going to get more into her in a little bit, but I loved hearing how you're
Yeah,
preparing.
she's amazing.
Now, I know you talked a bit about the fear of the birth itself. What books did you read that you found helpful? And were there any that you started to read that actually added to more fear?
um I don't remember a lot of the names of them. I remember reading Hypnobirthing because my friend had told me to read that.
Uh-huh.
No, none of them made me more fearful. I just knew
Good.
going into the pregnancy that I didn't want it to be painful, but I also didn't want an epidural because I have such a fear of needles. And so that's why I spent so much time researching birth. And I remember one of the books I read talked a lot about contractions and made it kind of like a math problem. And I don't remember the exact numbers because I blocked it all out of my head. But I just remember that like one contraction can like really only last for a minute, and the hardest part of the contraction really only lasts for 5 seconds. And so really when you're in that like level of labor, you're really only going to feel extreme intensity for maybe only 5 minutes total. And if I just thought like that, that was the most helpful thing that I could remember. And I just told my husband to just write down that math problem and remind it to me if I ever like started freaking out during the birth.
Did it help?
I ended up not needing it, but I think back in the back of my mind, it definitely helped just preparing and leading up to the birth.
That's great. So, right. So now I want to hear about your birth. Share the story.
Yeah, it was crazy. Everyone says birth is not at all like what they show in the movies. And my husband always jokes that it was exactly like the movies. So my due date was July 6th, and we moved apartments on June 24th. And everyone was telling me, oh, your first is going to be late. You have plenty of time. And so that's what we thought. But 3 days basically after we fully moved into our apartment on June 28th, I woke up around 5:30 in the morning, and I just felt this huge gush of liquid come out of me. And I was going to the bathroom to pee, so I just assumed, oh, I probably just peed myself. But it was just really weird because I've never done that before. And so I was like, maybe my water broke, but this just seems too early. And I know a lot of my friends had said their mucus plug had come out and they thought that was their water breaking, but it was just a mucus plug. So it wasn't a big deal. So the first person I texted was my doula. I just sent a picture of the fluid that was now on the bathroom floor. And she said, yep, that looks like amniotic fluid. I think your water just broke. You should call the hospital. So I called the hospital and they were like, you should come in as soon as possible. And that started to freak me out because I wasn't feeling any contractions at all. And I was afraid that if I didn't go into labor on my own, I would have to be induced. And that just scared me because I knew that I didn't want an epidural. And I just thought that if I got induced, I would somehow end up getting an epidural. But my doula calmed me down. She said, don't worry about it. Just spend as much time as possible at home, eat a good breakfast, and then, like try to go in within the next 2 hours. So that's exactly what I did. I took a long shower. I, made a good breakfast for myself. I think I made like avocado toast and yogurt because I thought it would be my last meal. My husband went out to Starbucks to get himself coffee. I don't drink coffee. And then I was like, why don't we just waste some time and try building the stroller now? So he started opening up the box to our stroller. We started putting it together. And all of a sudden, I started feeling contractions. And I was like, I don't know if this is it, but it could be. So then he decided to download an app that would time contractions. And his advice to everyone out there is don't download the app after you need it. Make sure you have it before you need to time it because it was a lot of figuring out how to use it while we were in the middle of actually timing the contractions. Also, at some point, the contractions were so bad, I would forget to tell him that they were over. And then I would be like, they're starting again. And he would be like, wait, I'm still timing the last one. So those didn't really work. But anyways, around 7:30, I think we called an Uber and started getting together. Or around 7:30, my contractions started. And then we eventually called an Uber. And then in the Uber, they started getting really bad. And the Uber driver was great. He was saying, like, do you want me to go slower? Do you want me to go faster? And I was like, I don't know. Just get me there. And he was like, by the time we got to the hospital, he was like, you guys were great. This is my first birth. Thanks for being so cool. And I was like, you too. This is my first birth too. And he was like, yeah, good luck. And I was like, thanks. And then by the time we checked in, I think it was 9 a.m. And I was just like I just couldn't, I had no idea what was going on. I was in so much pain. I had so much liquid coming out of me.
Were you still in the, you hadn't even gone to triage yet? Were you just getting into the hospital,
No,
like the
I
waiting
was
room?
just getting into the hospital. My friend had given me adult diapers because she said I would need them for postpartum, but you really need them when your water breaks. And so I was just wearing these adult diapers with my water, like everything coming out constantly. I couldn't, like, I remember everyone in the waiting room was so calm. Like, people were playing, like, Candy Crush or something on their phone. And I was like, are we in the right place? Like, everyone else doesn't seem like they're in as much pain as I am. And then I remember I sat down next to this man and he was like, oh, sorry, my wife is going to come back in a little and she's going to sit in that seat. And I was like, are you serious right now? I can't get up. Like, like, how can you make me get up right now? Like, I'm like moaning and I'm in pain. And then my husband was like, well, if that were me, I probably would have said the same thing. And I was like, well, are you not even taking my side? Like, so I just remember finding another bench. I was on hands and knees and I was just moaning and my hair was covering my face. I couldn't see anything. Finally, they moved us into triage where they put all these like wires on me that I found so uncomfortable. I kept ripping them off and they're like, ma'am, you can't do that. And I remember I just kept asking for water. I was so thirsty. And they just kept saying, we don't have water, but we can get you an epidural to make you more comfortable. And I was just like, no, I don't want an epidural. I just want...
Did
What?
they even offer you ice chips? Or they just went
No,
from water to epidural?
So then they brought, I also drink a lot of water. They brought me this little Dixie cup of water. And I was like, is this a joke? Like, I need like 100 of these. But they wouldn't bring it to me. And they kept just coming in and offering me an epidural. And I was like, I don't want an epidural. And so all I remember is my husband was great at this point. He was doing everything my doula had taught us how to do, like pushing all the pressure points, really helping calm me down. And my doula wasn't there yet. It just all happened so fast. So she hadn't had she was supposed to come meet us at our apartment, but there was no time for that. And so finally she showed up and I remember my husband saying like, this was the first time I could actually take it all in and realize what was happening. And I was just like in shock. And it was just great that like Taylor, our doula, was finally there because he could finally kind of just enjoy the moment himself rather than, trying to take care of me. But we were in triage for almost 2 hours because they didn't have a room ready for me. And I remember just being on my hands and knees, and the triage bed is very small and uncomfortable, and it's pretty much like 90-degree vertical. And I remember just having my hands on the back of the bed and my knees on the bed, and I was pretty much upright. I remember throwing up at some point, but it was just horrible being in triage, and I don't wish that on anyone to be stuck in the triage room when you're going through that type of labor. And I remember they told me they measured how many centimeters dilated I was, and they asked if I wanted to know, and I said if it was less than 5, don't tell me. And I remember they were like, okay, well then we're definitely not telling you. And I was like, oh great. So I was like, I'm in this much pain and I'm less than 5. I'm way less than 5, by the way, they told me. But my doula came and she, suggested I get into another position. We moved to the bathroom. She told me to sit backwards on the toilet, which really helped. I remember she was like rubbing my legs and just, at that point, I feel like I just kind of blacked out and let her take it from there. And I trusted everything she was telling me to do. Finally, I think around 11 a.m., they said they had a room for me and they brought me a wheelchair, and my doula suggested that I walk instead of use the wheelchair. And so I did that. And then finally we got into my room and again, they offered me an epidural. And my doula and I had a safe word so that if I ever really wanted the epidural, all I would have to do is say the safe word. But if I wanted the epidural and I didn't say the safe word, she would know that I didn't really mean it. And
did anyone tell them to say, like, we're really trying to avoid the epidural, please stop offering it? Because it's so
yes, my
crazy
doula
that
did.
they kept,
But
that's so great.
yes,
It's so crazy they kept, again, I have no, any beef with an epidural. I think it's a great tool for a lot of folks, but it just seems like it felt pushy. The way I'm hearing it sounds pushy. Maybe I'm just overinterpreting.
I think it's because there's so many people involved and a different person would come into my room all the time. I mean, I spent a lot of time in triage, and then my room, it was a whole new set of people. So
Right.
I think it was always maybe the first time they were asking me for an epidural. And I think it's just when they see someone that uncomfortable, it's their default to say, do you want an
Right.
epidural?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
But then towards the end, I remember I was saying that like I felt like I needed to push. I said I felt like like the body was coming. We didn't know the sex of the baby, so I kept saying I felt like the baby was coming. I could feel it. Like I felt like I needed to push. And then I remember the nurse in my room kept saying like, no, 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 it's way too soon. Do not push. If you push, like you'll destroy your cervix. And I remember looking at my doula being like, what does she mean? I'm so scared. I can't do anything but push right now. Like my body is pushing, like, and she's telling me I'm going to destroy my cervix. And my doula just looked at me and she said, don't listen to her. Like, just listen to your body. Your body knows exactly what to do. Just like let your body tell you what to do. And so I just let my body tell me what to do while this nurse was telling me not to do what I was doing. And then my doula was, trying to please the nurse and saying, okay, let's get Aly into another position so that maybe the baby will start to come down. And so as they were turning me onto my side, the nurse was like, oh my God, I see a head. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And they like rushed to get the doctor who was busy, I guess, doing another birth. So they had to get a floater doctor. And that floater doctor came in, and my doula realized she knew her because their kids go to school together. And they were like, oh my gosh, hi, hi. And I was like, hello. Like, and finally, they were like, okay, push. And I think with one push, I just pushed the baby out. And definitely, before I even pushed, the doctor asked me if I wanted an epidural again. And they were like, you're 9.5 centimeters. Do you want an epidural? And I was like, why would anyone want an epidural at 9.5 centimeters? So I think I just pushed, and the pushing was the easiest part for me.
Tell me
And
about
she
that.
just kind of became that. I don't even like, they were like, push. And then they were like, okay, now stop pushing. And I stopped pushing, and I was so calm because it's all on video. And then they're like, okay, now push. And then I like really pushed, and that was all it took. And it was great. And then the baby was born, and they asked my husband if he wanted to announce the sex because we had the sex as a surprise. And he was just like, I don't know what it is. And they were like, you can't get it wrong, Dad. And I was freaking out. I was like, what's wrong with our baby? Why can't you tell me what the sex is? And he was like, I think it's a girl. And they're like, yes, it's a girl. But we were both so
That's really
surprised.
funny.
Everyone had told us it was going to be a boy. The way they just, all those like old wives' tales with the way I was carrying, everyone told us it was going to be a boy. We only had a boy's name picked out. So we were not expecting a girl, but we could not be happier that it was a girl.
Emmy, and she's deliciously cute. And I've had the joy of seeing her in class. She really is something. Oh my gosh, your story is crazy. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, let's dive a little bit more into wrapping your head around how quick it was while it was happening. All right, we'll take a break. We'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. So what I find real, first of all, your story is fast and hilarious, and especially some of your responses to that. You're like 9.5 centimeters. I'm not getting an epidural, but more the idea of like, in your mind, it sounds like you were expecting it to take a lot longer because let's face it, most
Mm-hmm.
births statistically do take longer. Was there any
Mm-hmm.
point that you were getting overwhelmed by how quick it was, or were you able to kind of roll with it?
No, I never was overwhelmed by how quick it was because to me, it wasn't quick. Like everything, I had no idea how quick it was going. I mean, when they told me I was less than 5 centimeters dilated, I thought it was going to take forever. And,
Yeah.
and then when I told them I needed to push and they told me it was impossible and I shouldn't be pushing, I thought it was going to be another, long amount of time. So I never even realized it was moving quickly until it was actually done.
That I just love that idea. You're like, I have to push. So what happened
Yeah.
when the nurse noticed the head, and that's when she started to,
Yeah.
re- okay,
Yeah, she was telling me, she's like, you probably don't have to push. She's like, you probably just have to poop. And I was like, no, I know what pooping feels like. This doesn't feel like that. I feel it in the front. And she, didn't believe me. And I mean, yeah, I just knew I was feeling something different, and I knew my body was just naturally pushing already, and she kept telling me not to let my body do that, and it really scared me, and my doula could see that I was really scared by that because I thought I was going to destroy my body like the nurse was
Yeah.
telling me to that I was going to do. And so just having my doula there being like, don't listen to her, your body knows exactly what to do, really calmed me down, and I just kind of blocked the nurse out of my head and just did whatever my doula said.
So let's dive more into that because your doula sounds really wonderful. So tell me, how do you think
She's
having
the
your doula
best.
there benefited you?
Like 100% benefited me. Before I even got pregnant, I never even knew really what a doula was. I thought, only hippy dippy people who have home births get doulas. But the more I researched how to give birth without an epidural, the more I read about doulas and how much they can help. And I'm so happy I found my doula, Taylor. She was the perfect fit for me. I interviewed a few doulas, and for some reason, Taylor just was the right personality for me. She didn't feel too hippy dippy at all. And she just, everything she said about, preparing the body really sold me. And she was great. The second I hired her, I basically think I texted her at the beginning. I probably texted her once a week maybe, and she texted me more, just checking in on me. But then towards the end, I was asking her every question there was, like, can I walk on the sidewalk like this? Can I drink this tea? Can I eat this food? Will this make me go into labor? I asked her everything. And then even after I gave birth, I texted her every single day. I said, should breastfeeding feel like this? Or I've been texting her all last night even, and my daughter's almost 6 months old, and I'm asking her, what solid should I introduce first? So now she's like a really good friend of mine, but she still knows all the answers, and I'm so glad that I have her in my life.
I love that. Well, first of all, I love that you found that friendship and that support, and that when you've ever had a question, you knew who to go to, and she was able to support you. And you know how I feel about preparing the body. I mean, you're just,
Yes.
speaking my language. I absolutely love that. And it sounds like, you guys did a great work together and that you built a wonderful trust. So let's dip into
Yeah,
the
actually, Ellen
breastfeeding. Yeah.
recommended her to me.
I know Taylor from Ellen. Yes.
Yes, yes.
She's the one because she does the body balance method, and so I know
The
that
body
she
ready method.
knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, the body ready method. So I know that she knows how to get your body very well prepared.
Yes.
So that could be a reason that things worked so well, is that your body was well
I
aligned.
definitely attribute a lot of it to that.
Yeah, baby was well aligned. You were doing all the things that can really help prepare you. I don't want to say right things because I don't want anyone to hear be like, I did those things too and it didn't work out, because our bodies are all different. But
Hmm.
it sounds like everything really set well in your body. But you talked about breastfeeding, and I wanted to jump into
Hmm.
that because I know that breastfeeding had been a bit challenging for you. How do you feel about sharing about that?
Yeah, it was very challenging for me. And what was most challenging about it, I think, was that nobody told me it was going to be challenging. I never knew that there could be any issues with breastfeeding. And so I assumed I have a 6 month maternity leave from work, and I just assumed I'm just going to breastfeed for 6 months. And the second I go back to work, I'm going to stop. And I thought that it would be that easy. But it's not at all. I breast in the hospital when they first tried to latch her onto me, it was very painful, and they kept telling me, try a different hold, try the football hold, try doing it on your left side, now try holding her on your left arm but bringing her to your right side. And everything just hurt so much more than I ever imagined. And the biggest problem for me was that I had a huge oversupply of milk. And I think it was really hard to share that with people because I think more people who struggle with breastfeeding have an undersupply of milk. And so
Hmm.
they didn't even understand how mine could be a problem. And it was just so hard. Like I was constantly leaking milk. I didn't even have time to get out of the shower and dry off, because the second the water stopped running, I would have milk all over the floor of the bathroom. And it was just so frustrating. Every time I wanted to take a shower, I would have to basically wash a new towel because milk would just soak up the towel that I was using to dry myself with.
Wow.
And I couldn't get dressed because everything was soaking wet, and every time I didn't have any bras that would fit me. My boobs got so much bigger, and I couldn't even try on bras because the milk would just go into them. And so if I didn't want to keep that bra, it would already be stained. And so I just got frustrated and bought so many bras that didn't fit me ever, but I had already ruined them. And I just was so frustrated in the beginning. Especially, I didn't want anyone to come over because it was so painful. I couldn't wear a bra or a shirt, and everyone just wanted to see the baby, but I just couldn't even put clothes on, and I was in pain, and it was just so hard. And I think I went through 5 lactation consultants, and maybe each of them helped a little, but none of them really helped. I think the only thing that helped me was time. And
Okay,
so
so
eventually, yeah.
no, I was just gonna say, so tell me how all that resolved. So that must have been probably very overwhelming as well. Like you probably wanted support and help, and yet you were in a lot of pain and not probably, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
receiving guests. And what kind of support besides lactation consultants were you able to have anyone physically there to help you?
Yes, I'm lucky that my parents live right nearby, and they were always over, and they were so great, and it was so great having them over. But I don't think anyone really understood how hard breastfeeding was for me. And anytime I like I said, anytime I tried to tell somebody, they were like, "Oh, well, I had the opposite problem. So you're so lucky that you're able to give your baby breast milk." And I am so lucky, and I realized that, but it was just mentally so much harder on me. And
Hmm.
I think I really wanted to start introducing formula so that other people could, help feed her and I could get some sleep. And it was, I just didn't even know how to approach it, because I didn't want to pump because I thought that pumping would increase my supply. But I didn't want to not pump, because if I didn't pump, then it would just hurt so much because I would have so much supply that needed to come out. And it was just a constant, should I pump? Should I not pump? Should I just feed? And I think I just eventually we went on a trip to Ireland, and it was kind of like we were always on the go, and I just breastfed her when I could, and we gave her a bottle when we couldn't, and I didn't think once about whether it was going to increase or decrease my supply. And I don't know if it was the timing at that point. It was about 2 months into it, or it was just, I was more relaxed there. But somehow my supply seemed to regulate a lot while we were there. And when we came home, it was much easier for me. And I think I also started birth control, and my supply just started to go down. And I came to a point where it was like, do I want to pump to increase my supply, or do I kind of just want to let my supply go away naturally? And at that point, I made the decision that it was really time for me to just end the breastfeeding, which was very sad for me. I loved breastfeeding. I loved everything about breastfeeding. The only thing I hated was when I was not breastfeeding. So the in between times of when I would just have to wear pads because I was leaking all the time. But the actual act of breastfeeding, I loved. So it was a very hard decision to make. But in the end, I think, I'm happy that I got that time to do it. And I'm
Hmm.
happy that I'm not doing it now.
And then you made the right decision for you because it sounds like it worked out that you are happier now and you had a wonderful experience when she was on the breast. That's
Yes.
wonderful.
Yeah. So I'm really
So,
lucky that I had that.
so tell me a little bit about just so if the breastfeeding was a challenge. How was the other parts of your postpartum?
It was fairly easy. My recovery, one of the reasons why I didn't want an epidural is because I heard that the recovery would be easier, and I would say that my recovery was fairly easy. I went to see a pelvic floor therapist, just because everyone told me you should do it, even if you don't think you have any problems, and it just helped, they gave me a few exercises to do. All I really wanted to do was start running again. And, they gave me a few exercises to warm my body up before it was ready to start running. And I found that really helpful. And other than that, I mean, I would say I'm pretty lucky in that my recovery really wasn't that bad. My lower abs still need a lot of work, and it sometimes hurts to get out of bed because I lift my body up and use my lower abs that don't really work anymore. But other than that, it was a pretty easy, smooth recovery.
And it also sounds like you did have really great support with your folks so close by. I think
Yes,
that's such
yes.
an important part.
Yes. And I mean, I did go through a time in the very beginning where I thought, oh, it's summer, everyone's going out and going to happy hour, and I can't leave the apartment. And I was so sad. And my husband just said, let's just leave the apartment. Who cares what you're wearing? Let's just go. And you have to just do it. And we'll bring the baby. And so we went 2 blocks away from my apartment and we got a glass of wine and it worked out fine. The baby slept the whole time. And then more and more, he kind of rallied me to go get another drink, then brunch, then we tried dinner. And he tried to get me out of the house as much as possible. And it just made it so much better. Even if I wasn't in the mood to go out, just making sure that I did go out was really helpful.
That's great advice from your husband. Okay, we're going to take another break. When we come back, think of what is one final tip or piece of advice you would like to offer new or expectant parents. Okay, we'll be right back. So, what do you think? You have very much researched pregnancy. You went through birth. You're a new parent. Is there anything that you either wish somebody had shared with you or that you've learned that you want to pass on?
Yeah, I think I have 2 things to say. My main takeaway is that if you're interested in doing a birth without an epidural, if I did it, you can do it because I was shocked that I was able to do it, but if I can do it, you can do it. So if you really want to do it, you would be able to do it. And then my one piece of advice, I think, is that everything was so hard in the very beginning. And I remember, a lot of my lactation consultants, a lot of my friends who had babies all told me that around 6 weeks, everything would start to get easier. And when I got to 6 weeks, it was probably the hardest time for me. My baby was not sleeping. I was still having issues breastfeeding and I was still in a lot of pain. And it was just so hard for me at that point. And I remember just losing hope because everyone told me by 6 weeks, everything would be easier. So my piece of advice is it does get easier and it does get a lot better. And it doesn't always happen at 6 weeks, but it does eventually happen. So don't don't lose hope if it doesn't happen exactly when you were told it was supposed to happen. But I'm almost 6 months in and I can tell you it is so much better now. And I remember the dark days, but they are so far behind me.
Yeah, everyone's on their own journey and own timetable. I mean, clearly your birth told us that.
Yeah.
Oh, Aly, I so enjoyed chatting with you. I also love when you're in class. It was really fun to get to hear this experience and get to know you even better. So thank
Me
you so
too.
much. Thank you. It was really
Thank
fun.
you for letting me share this.
Absolutely.
This has been an episode of Yoga Birth Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.